I know there's been a lot of chatter and discussion lately about Odell Beckham Jr. and his antics, dare I say his shenanigans, his behavior on the football field. And the thought being is that he's out of control, he's a head case, that he's affecting the team, he's becoming a distraction. And for those that want to think that, I say you're probably right. Odell Beckham Jr. needs to calm the hell down. It's serious, bro, but it ain't that serious. Now, I don't mind my players playing with passion and fire. It's good to see that. There's nothing worse to see a player just kind of going through the motions and not really caring about how they perform. But it's a whole different thing when you get to the point when you get so worked up over the littlest, simplest, stupidest shit to where it starts to affect you mentally and potentially takes you out of the game. And then not only that, takes the team out of its rhythm and out of its game and puts the team in a disadvantageous situation. And when I look at Odell Beckham Jr. right now and his behavior, you could argue that it's selfish. You know, at the end of the day, you're a grown-ass man. You have to know that in your line of work, a lot of these defensive backs and defensive players are going to try and troll you. Their whole modus operandi is to try and get you out of your rhythm, get you out of your comfort zone, to rattle you, to shake you. So being the great talent that you are, you have to learn to ignore that stuff the best as you can. You have to learn how to let your play do the talking. You have to understand what they're trying to do to you, and that by caving in and losing control, you're doing nothing but hurting your team and ultimately hurting yourself as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's funny to see some of this stuff. While you see the UFC struggling to come out with a competitive main event for a fight card, you give me Odell Beckham Jr. versus the kicking net inside of the octagon. Now that's fucking money. I'll pay to see that shit. Because right now it's kicking net 1 and Odell Beckham Jr. nothing. But in all seriousness, I don't know if he's got an issue in terms of rage, if he's got an issue in terms of being able to control his emotions, if he's got something off up top. I don't know. But Odell Beckham Jr. needs to figure it out. Because there's nothing I hate more than seeing a wonderful talent, which Odell Beckham Jr. is, an arguably transcendent talent in terms of some of the things he could do at the wide receiver position on the football field, which he is, and which he can do. And see all of the narrative and all of the discussion be about how he can't control his emotions. He's crying on the sidelines in the middle of games. He's getting hit in the head by a kicking net. He's sitting there going after people and getting unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and putting his team in a bad space and himself in a bad space. I hate seeing that because I was a huge fan of Odell Beckham Jr. leading up to the 2014 NFL Draft. And one of my comments when talking about him was that he had questionable hands at the time, believe it or not. But if he ever got his hands right, he would be the best receiver in that draft class, and it wouldn't be close. And you look a couple of years later, and you could definitely make that argument that he's the best receiver out of that draft class, and is probably not even close. There are lots of other really talented players, the Mike Evans, the Sammy Watkins of the worlds, the Allen Robinsons, and many other guys. Jarvis Landry, so on and so forth. But he's the dude. Odell Beckham Jr. has that dude factor. He has that ability to be one of the very best players in all of the National Football League, not just one of the best, if not the best wide receivers in the league. But it's this type of stuff here that will prevent him from ever achieving his full potential. Now, instead of defensive coordinators and defensive players trying to figure out how to scheme to stop you in terms of X's and O's, now they're just going to look to play mind games with you. They're going to try and get at you mentally. They're going to take that Rodman worm approach of trying to fuck with you in the head, and knowing that if they do, they can get you off your spot and they can take you out of the equation. And right now, looking at the first 4 weeks of the 2016 NFL season, that's exactly what it looks like is happening with Odell Beckham Jr. Teams are getting under his skin, defensive backs are getting into his head, and he's taken himself and his team completely out of the game. So Odell Beckham Jr., please get some damn control over yourself before your team has to bench you or suspend you, before it affects you long term. It's not a good look. I know it's serious, but dude, it ain't that serious. Now, with that said, Odell Beckham Jr.'s got to straighten himself up. Odell Beckham Jr.'s got to learn to control his damn self. He's got to learn how you walk that fine line between passion and emotion and fire and out of control, reckless, crazy, ridiculous behavior. He's got to figure out how to toe that line, and he's not doing a very good job of it right now. But the media needs to calm down on this shit too. I mean, it'd be one thing if Odell Beckham Jr. was going out there and raping women or beating women or getting busted for drug charges or weapons charges, shooting himself in the leg, Aki Talib, via Plaxico Burress style. He's not doing any of that stuff. And the way the media sits there and latches onto this shit and talks about this shit gets old really freaking quickly. There are so many other things to talk about, serious issues to talk about in sports specifically, the NFL particularly. And instead we're focusing on this guy getting hit in the head by a damn kicking net. And him and Xavier Rhodes going at it on frickin' Monday night. There's a point where you start to go over the thing where you just focus on Odell Beckham Jr. and his behavior and say that needs to stop, to where you now shift to the media attention that's been given to this and say the madness needs to fucking stop here too. This shit is crazy. This is what passes for sports journalism? Dare I even fucking ask? I mean, good God Almighty Christ. And now let's say this. If somebody like a Tom Brady was doing some of this shit, a Peyton Manning was doing some of this shit, or any other set of many other players were doing this shit, I don't know that the attention would be nearly the same. And if it did get the same type of attention, it wouldn't get necessarily the same type of negative attention. It wouldn't. We'd be talking about the fire that burns within, the passion in their belly. And oh my God, this guy takes it seriously. And all this shit with Odell Beckham Jr., we act like he's the only one taking cheap shots, that he's doing this and he's completely unprovoked. Even going back to last year, the Panthers game and Josh Norman and shit. Everybody focused on Odell Beckham Jr.'s reaction. It's kind of like NFL officials. When a fight starts, they flag the second dude that gets involved. Well, in a lot of cases, Odell Beckham Jr. is reacting to the crap that other people are doing. And while, yes, he can kind of stop being a pussy about it, frankly, and man up about it a little bit, these other dudes need to stop doing this stupid shit too. The unnecessary interference, the late hits, the questionable out-of-bounds hits, and all of these types of things. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. has a target on his back, not only for the distraction of his behavior, but the fact that he's that good of a player. And you get star players like an Odell Beckham Jr., I'm not saying that you completely treat them with kid gloves or they deserve to be held to an entirely different standard and should be able to get away with murder necessarily. See Ray Lewis. But you got to protect those guys to a certain degree. I mean, the NFL goes above and beyond to a ridiculous point to protect the quarterbacks. A guy like Odell Beckham Jr. should not have to sit there and worry about getting creamed when he's already out of bounds because a corner decides he wants to take a cheap shot at him. Or when he's going over the field and somebody takes a cheap shot at him. It's not all on Odell Beckham Jr. And all of this media attention is just on the reaction, the resulting behavior. We're not focusing sometimes on the core behavior that is causing the issue and the problem. And furthermore, on top of all of that, like I mentioned earlier, Odell Beckham Jr. has got to straighten his shit up. He's got to calm down. He's got to get control of himself. But the fact is, it's now Friday. I'm turning on SportsCenter this morning for what reason, I know not why. And they're still talking about Odell Beckham Jr. And not talking about how he's going to match up against the Green Bay Packers defense. You're not talking about the Sunday night game. We're talking about his behavior. And you could say Odell Beckham Jr. contributes to that, but Jesus Christ. Are we that starved for interesting and compelling sports journalism and sports stories that 4 days later we still have to be kicking the tires on this shit? When is enough enough? I mean, good Christ almighty. Talk about these teams that aren't playing well, the Carolinas and the Arizonas of the world. Focus on the decrease in NFL television viewership. Talk about the substandard product on the football field. Talk about the ridiculousness in terms of the sheer number of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that are called. The fact that we're flagging even the most menial or mediocre of end zone celebrations, trying to take all of the fun out of the game, and once and for all truly making the NFL the no fun league. It's the shit like this by organizations like ESPN and others that do everything they can to kill all the joy of sports for me. I mean, good God. 4 days later, you're still freaking talking about it. Enough's enough. He's not killing anybody. He's not raping anybody. He's not beating a woman. He's not stealing shit. He's not selling drugs. He's not shooting himself in the leg. He's not distributing guns illegally. He's not doing any of that shit. So what? He gets a little fired up and over-emotional at times. We don't need to talk about it for 96 straight fucking hours. Yes, Odell Beckham Jr. needs to calm down, but the damn media does too. This shit's crazy. Get a grip. And give me a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. any day of the fucking week. At least he cares. I know he cares. It would be the responsibility of a coach, of a team, of a locker room to help channel that and funnel that in the right direction. But give me what he's got. I'll take that any day of the fucking week. Let's stop demonizing him.